We are back live with the Harbor celebration. The 1987 America's Cup is over. Dennis Conner and Stars and Stripes, the victors, returning the cup once again to the United States. Dennis Conner, who grew up a young man in a family of modest means. His family, they were not sailors. His father had a fishing boat at one time. But Dennis's love of the sport seemed almost inborn. As a young kid, he would hang around the San Diego Yacht Club and just pester everybody. He was always asking questions. He wanted to be a sailor from day one, and boy, has he made that a reality for himself. You just probably got a little glance at Dennis Conner from the onboard camera. We're having a little bit of a problem with that right now, but that's to be expected, as you know, with the transmissions going all over the place, the signals bouncing around from here and there. And look at some of this. You're seeing American flags proudly being flown from all over this place. They seem to have magically appeared suddenly. I think people were kind of holding them under wraps for a while, maybe not wanting to upset the Australians as the race was going on. But they are out, they are unfurled, and they are shining very brightly in Western Australia. Dennis Conner coming home, man who changed the face of 12-meter racing. He made it a full-time investment of time, of energy, of money, fundraising, preparation. He is as well prepared as he could possibly have been. This time around, his boat was designed in a way that would enable him to be competitive. And they say, with equal boats, Dennis Conner is your toughest sailor on the face of the earth, and I think it was proven when he had a bit of a lesser boat in 1983. In fact, considerably lesser boat in 1983, what he was able to do just to hang in there. Of course, losing the cup to John Bertrand and Australia too, but I think that has been rectified in his mind and in a lot of the minds of other people. Just a few of the insane people out there. Some fireworks going off, people in tuxedos and kayaks, and carrying champagne out to meet Dennis. As he heads closer and closer into shore. People in little rubber, what do you call them? Little tubes out there. Yeah, how about inner tubes? That sounds right. The fleet is arriving, folks. It's coming on in. It's a long way out and a slow ride. And this is going to be a good time for Dennis Conner and crew tonight. And boy, have they earned it. Just in the few weeks that I have been here, just to get a sense of the great concentration that has gone into this and the hours and the work that they've put in. And now they're going right by our ESPN Harborside studios, right by our window, and right by the 100,000 fans who have lined the dock. Gary Jobson aboard, waving to us. And as we mentioned earlier, we were efforting to talk to Dennis right on board. Gary is there, but this one time and one time only, we were having our problems with our audio transmission from the boat. So we will get Dennis once he docks. Just an extraordinary sight that you're looking at. The blimps, the helicopters hovering overhead. All sorts of craft out there. The Stars and Stripes glides home. Just a beautiful picture. We said people are everywhere, and people are everywhere. They're hanging from the rafters. The sun bouncing off the water. Stars and Stripes backlit coming in. It's just a beautiful picture. In person or on a TV set. Just an exciting, exciting time. And if you're feeling the least bit proud Well, you should be, because this really is a proud-feeling moment for the United States. And if you weren't into sailing before you caught some of our coverage, we hope you are now, and we hope you're feeling as good as we are about being here. This has just been an extraordinary time. Ian Murray and his crew saluting Dennis Conner and Stars and Stripes, and their supporters as well. Mainsail coming down. Look at that flag. That has to be the hugest flag in the history of the world, flying off that boat. And we told you he was coming off the Sunbird at some point, and he's arrived. Okay. Jim, coming off the boat, that had to be an exciting thing for you out there today.
It was amazing, but the scene that we're seeing here in the harbor, I think, is even more amazing. The spectator fleet was all out there, and the ocean was so large, but the same number of boats are in here in the harbor, and it's so small. I don't know where they're going to put them all.
We had a shot a little earlier of Dennis looking around, a little bit concerned that he may get hit by one of those boats, but obviously not the case.
You know, I was watching on board Kookaburra to see if Ian Murray was out there. And indeed he was. He was right at the head of the class. He had not changed from any of his sailing garb, and he was waving to all of the Australian supporters. And I know, Gail, you've covered so many sporting events. You have seen a lot of athletes that will run and hide in the training room. And I think it's a credit to the crew on board the Kookaburra that they did not do that. They came out, they knew that they had thousands and thousands of Australian supporters who have been here all day long, and rather than deny them a moment that they will long, of course, remember, they were all up on board, proudly standing there, saluting, as you pointed out, Dennis Conner and Stars and Stripes, but also saluting their fellow countrymen. And I think that's a memory that I'm going to retain for a long time. Sometimes you can be losers and still be winners at the same time.
You're looking at people in little rubber craft, people leaning off the rigging of the fishing boats. Just, they are all over the place. And it seems that they're multiplying as we speak. You know, you mentioned Ian Murray, Jim, and I think in a lot of ways this has been an exceptional learning experience for him. I think when he comes back 3 years from now, and I'm sure that he will have learned a lot, not just in terms of what it takes to be the best sailor in the world, but just in terms of handling the whole situation, the kind of knowledge that only experience can give you.
I think, Gail, the one thing that somebody will have to help Ian Murray out with will be some balance in his life right now. I mean, obviously, he's been carrying the weight of this nation of 16.5 million people and 40 million kangaroos on his shoulder for a long, long time. But I think we saw it with John Collius in America, too. He said at the press conference he did not think he would be coming back, to which Tom Blackhaller quickly cut him off and interjected. He said, "You'll be back, mate," and tried to make the tone a little bit more upbeat. I mean, obviously, when you've reached the end of a long and an arduous campaign and you're down, I think you need time to sit back and reflect. I mean, you've seen it with football coaches and baseball managers. People want the opportunity to take time and kind of soak it all in to see what kind of a job they really have done.
We will be back with more of our harbor celebration in just a minute. Enjoy the pretty pictures, the American flags. We will be back with more. Stay with us.
When your name is Hilton, you learn that every guest deserves a thank you. So thanks a million.
Only Hilton says thank you with a gift for every guest every day you stay. Gifts like upgrades on Hertz cars, free flights on United Airlines, and a year of free stays at Hilton. There are no points to add up, nothing to keep track of, and nothing else like it in the hotel business. A gift for every guest every day.
Nobody says thank you like Hilton. Thank you.
Ours, as you know, is not a perfect world. May I? That's why it's so refreshing when something really perfect comes along. Like Diet Coke. Tastes great straight, or on the rocks. Yet it's just 1 calorie. That's why Diet Coke is the perfect soft drink. For an imperfect world.
Just for the taste of it. Diet Coke.
We are back live in Fremantle. The America's Cup Harbor celebration continues. And boy, has it been a colorful sight. Stars and Stripes has come into shore. She will, of course, head in to be weighed and measured and all of those wonderful things that they do to 12-meter yachts after races. And then all of the interviews, the media will be on the attack. We know that well. And then perhaps at some point later this evening, they will have a chance to maybe relax just a bit and let everything sink in.
Gail, can you recall an event where you have seen so many spectacular sights? I mean, obviously, we're blessed with bright sunshine and blue skies and colorful boats with gold hulls and with blue hulls and people dressed in all kinds of different outfits and flags from different countries. But I'm trying to equate this to the Super Bowl. You and I have both been there, to the World Series. And I can't recall seeing so many pretty pictures. And I'm not trying to be self-serving. I mean, I'm a little bit awestruck at the colors that we're seeing, at the size of the crowd, emotion, at the noise that is going on, and at the excitement level. And keep in mind, we're watching from a losing perspective right now. We've almost gone into the losing locker room. It's like, you know, it's like being in Fenway after the Red Sox lost Game 5.
I have been to Newport a couple of times during the Cup, and that was always kind of a fun place to be, and it was, the pictures were nice, but in a lot of ways, because of the uniqueness of this, for this country, I think that so much effort, so much money, so much energy has been poured into this place to make it look like, and the word I used the other day was a wonderland. I mean, this is almost like you could find it at Disney World. The town of Fremantle, the harbor, it looks like somebody drew a picture of kind of a magical harbor, and then somebody made it actually happen in real life. They actually built it.
And we're on the America's Cup ride.
Right, exactly.
You know, I was in Newport also, but I got the impression that the only people that really cared about it were the New York Yacht Club, 3 Boston television stations, and a Providence television station. I didn't get the sense that an entire nation was watching, as we certainly have had down here in the U.S. and in Australia. I mean, our Australian television counterparts, 9 Network, they're beaming pictures all across this nation of 16.5 million. And just like in Newport back in '83, an entire nation is watching, and they're seeing the sights and the sounds that we're enjoying back in the United States and here in the harbor. I just didn't get the sense of the magnitude of the event in Newport that we've seen down here. And I think 2 things happened when the Cup was lost. I think it gave Dennis Conner new challenges, new motivations to go on in an area that he had already reached the top of the mountain. And that by virtue of those new challenges, it also gave the United States a new perspective on the America's Cup and the competition. And now, with the onboard pictures on US 55 and onboard Kookaburra, for the first time, the American public has seen what the 12-meter racing game is all about. And look at the pictures here. Well, we talked about 1983. It was 40 months ago in Newport. And this was the scene that evening, that September evening in Newport. Alan Bond said, "Stand up and cheer." He had taken victory from America. The Cup's home was the New York Yacht Club and America for 132 years. And this was the raising of the keel, the first time that anyone had ever seen what now, of course, is the revolutionary wing keel. Look at it glistening, designed by Ben Lexon. Look at the little kayak there alongside. And of course, this keel would revolutionize. I don't think that's the same guy in the kayak and the tuxedo that's here in Fremantle. That's a long kayak ride.
You know, you mentioned how impactful it all seems here, and I think John Bertrand was talking about that earlier. It's hard for us to realize because we're not Australians, but the winning of the Cup for them was a national moment. One of those moments that you take with you, that you cherish forever. Unfortunately, in our country, those national moments have usually been attached to tragedies. John Kennedy being shot, the Challenger shuttle exploding, and I'm not making by any means that sort of comparison, but those were events where you remember where you were and what your feelings were. And for the Australians, even though this was a sporting event and not by any means as serious, it was for them a moment when the country just stood still. Time just stood still for them.
I think in sport, the only moment like that was probably Lake Placid in 1980, when the United States won the gold medal in hockey. I think it's that kind of a moment in sport that people equate, certainly if you're an Australian, equate Newport in '83 to. And I would think for all the people back on the East Coast, I mean, we've been all over the great country back home that we haven't seen in 6 months, our little tribe of renegades down here. Why, we started with the former Commodore Jim Reynolds in San Diego and swung over to Philadelphia with Bill Packer, the driving force behind America 2. I think that people late into the night staying up, I mean, there's no question that ESPN has disrupted some sleeping habits, not to mention some dining habits, I would suspect, around the country. I think that everybody is going to remember where they were this night, the night the Cup came back home. There is the tender Betsy alongside Stars and Stripes, and if they weigh Stars and Stripes right now, I'll tell you they'll disqualify her because there are more than the allotted crew of 11 on board. There are all the fellas from the B-boat, the shore support staff, and the last couple of weeks, if you've been following us on ESPN, as we've been talking with Malin Burnham, the syndicate chairman, they have had to add an awful lot of support people to Stars and Stripes just to handle the phone calls of support, the words of encouragement, and the contributions which have come pouring in. There is the Betsy, which is an amazing vessel in itself. We were first on Betsy out in Honolulu. It seems like a lifetime ago, but it was really back in July. And they brought the Betsy over, the tender. She's about as stable as an aircraft carrier, or maybe the USS Missouri. And of course, she has become kind of the flagship of the Stars and Stripes Armada. There's champagne along board. They've got all sorts of rock music. It's been blaring away from the speakers, the Jimmy Buffett song. There was a new Beach Boys song you heard this morning as the Betsy took Stars and Stripes out for her date with Destiny.
Jim, you mentioned the word disqualify a little bit earlier, and just to update people on something that some information we gave you a couple of hours ago now, that task force Chief Kevin Perry said he had received a report which could cast doubt on the legality of the materials that were used on Stars and Stripes, and said he had intentions to proceed further with an investigation of that. Just so you know, we have not dropped that story, that we are still efforting to find out exactly what will happen, if anything, but as of right now, we don't have any further word on what Kevin Perry intends to do, but I'm sure we will be hearing something from him down the road.
Well, I think John Bertram summed up that situation pretty well. Obviously, it's a story that will need to be followed if there's any further action by the Perry Corporation, the Perry Syndicate, the Kookaburras. But certainly the timing was rather unusual to throw a rather damp towel over Dennis Conner's day in the sun and the entire syndicate. As you look at the Betsy right there, that ship may actually stay here. It may never see Honolulu again. There have been several Australian firms interested in purchasing the Betsy and studying her and perhaps developing a fleet here in Australia of similar boats. Look at that sight. They are still coming in. I mean, we said that there were thousands of boats out on the ocean in a huge spectator fleet. Well, folks, they've got to come back into this harbor. How'd you like to be the harbor control? That's like being a traffic control man at O'Hare right now.
Really?
There is a historic moment. Kookaburra and Stars and Stripes passing one another.
Like ships in the night, in the day.
But you know, they have to know what's going on in the other's mind, the winners and the losers, but they know what it took to get this far. They all put in the same amount of effort. They all got up at 5:30 at the crack of dawn. They went out, they worked out the hours and hours of sit-ups and push-ups, the hours and the weights, the Nautilus equipment, the bad breakfast at bad time, running in the rain, up those sand dunes, up the coast of Perth, and all the arduous hours of preparation that has gone into a campaign. And even back home in the States, people from Courageous and from Eagle and from Heart of America and from America 2 and from USA can also identify with this moment. So we'll be coming back live to Fremantle Harbor. The celebration continues, the harbor celebration for Stars and Stripes.